Mr. Mangena takes this exhibit to his laboratory when he returned with it from Cleveland and did some tests on it or analyzed it.
His laboratory?
To his workstation within the laboratory.
I see.
So that's just the background.
Ngicazela ukuthi kwenzekani ukuthi uma ngena wathatha lesibhamu iya naso la esenze la khona wafike wasihlola.
Thank you. Now he then prepared an affidavit in terms of which he found that firearm that he went to fetch from Cleveland is the firearm, according to him, the firearm from which the scene bullet or the bullet that was recovered at Fort Lawrence at a place where this incident took place was fired from.
Manje wasethola ukuthi le nhlamvu le ya elethiwe kusho ukuthi yadutshulwa yiso lesi sibhamu lesi le nhlamvu yatholakala la endaweni ke yobugebengu.
Now that is just by bit of a background of what is happening. Now he came and testified here at court. We know that after having done those analyses, he requested you to confirm them as per his testimony. He also requested 3 of his other colleagues to confirm or to override his findings, which were Fesser, Feljun, and Ntini. That is his evidence, and you and yourself as well as his colleagues.
Manje kuthi ke eseqedileke ukuhlola lesibhamu wayesecela ke uFesel noFelion noNtini nawe ukuthi nibukeze umsebenzi ayewenzile ekuhloleni lesi sibhamu kunjani?
I hear you.
Thank you. Now, is it correct that to one of the questions that was posed by my colleagues as to the procedure relating to the confirmation of results or their review in circumstances where the chief examiner finds that they are positive and he goes to his colleagues, he finds his colleague confirms his finding of positiveness, then in terms of protocol, then the matter would end there.
Kushuthi ke uma ohlolayo uqala esehlolile wathola umphumela ubiza owesibili ukuthi akazoqinisekisa lo mphumela ngoba uthole umphumela owamukelekayo kusho ukuthi ke uvele kuphelele lapho akunjalo.
Yeah, that is correct, but I must also state that analysts are not prohibited from consulting other analysts.
Yes.
Yebo ngiyavumela lokho kodwa ke abahlaziyi laba abangatshela ukuthi bangayo thola imbono kwabanye.
Thank you. Just to confirm and authenticate their finding, that's so.
Uqinisekisa ke imphumela abayitholile akunjalo.
Is it in respect of verification or opinion? I did not get the question well.
Angitholanga kumbuzo umbuzo wakho ukhuluma ngokuthola isiqinisekiso noma ukubukeza.
I don't know whether confirm, review, authentication, or opinion, they carry the same meaning. You got to tell us.
Okay, lamagama kumene ngathi achaza into eyodwa mhlawumbe ningasitshela.
The person who verifies the finding will also complete a prescribed form, a worksheet.
manje umuntu ke uqinisekisa ke umphumela uzogcwalisa ke form ethize.
There might also be other people who just give opinion, but they don't complete anything, any document. They just give an opinion.
Abanye bengenza ke bazoletha imbono yabo mayelana nalomsebenzi kodwa akusho ukuthi nabo bafanele bagcwalise iform.
Are you done with your explanation?
Qedile ngicazelo yakho?
That is correct.
Yebo unjani?
Thank you. Now, I want to understand your explanation very clear. You say a person that confirms there's a form that they fill in. Let's segmentalize your answer.
The verifier completes a worksheet after he has verified the findings, like I did in this case.
Awubukezayo ke ugcwalisa isheet lela abaligcwalisayo njengoba nami ngenza.
Now, will that be the sheet that is presented to him by the chief examiner?
Ushuthi ke leli khasi leli aligcwalisayo ulithola kulona ahlola kuqala.
The sheet is part of the case file.
Yeah.
Leli khasi ke leli aligcwalisayo ke lifakwa ngaphakathi kwefile le leli cala.
Thank you. Now, those that would also be involved, you refer to siphoning opinion from them. What is it that they necessarily do?
Manje labo okucelwa kubona ukuthi nabo abafake yabo imbono yini ke abayenzayo?
They can only give opinion after viewing the specimen under the microscope as well.
Nika ke imbono yabo emva ukuthi nabo bahlole ispecimen lesingaphansi kwe-microscope.
And they do not fill the specific form that you're referring to.
Utheka baligcwalisi leli form leli okhulume ngayo.
Yeah, on their part is just an informal giving of opinion. It's not a formal thing.
Cha ubona ke nje ukuchaza ukunika ke nje imbono kafushana kona ukunika umbono umbiko ogcwele.
Thank you. Now, as per protocol, the reviewer or the confirmer and subsequent to those who are requested to opine on the results, are they by protocol required to submit affidavits?
Manje ke laba abukezayo nalaba abaletha imbono nje bayaphoqelwa yini ukuthi babhalise ama-affidavit?
Only the original examiner produces an affidavit.
Obhala ke i-affidavit yilo ohlolo kokuqala.
Thank you. Now, you I don't want to say that you said that, but from what I got from your explanation of the operation at the forensic science laboratory, there are protocols and there are exceptional circumstances where those protocols get deviated from, not so.
Utheke kukhona imithetho ke ukuthi ngaphansi kwezinye izimo kuyachezuka kuyona. Kunjalo.
That is correct.
Yebo.
Thank you. Now, in terms of the review protocol, that is confirmation of the results, the standing rule is that the chief examiner would approach his colleague in circumstances where there's a positive finding, will approach his colleague, and if his colleague affirms his finding, then his colleague will pen an affidavit, and then his colleague, who is now the reviewer, will just fill in that information in the form and sign and say, in this regard, I totally agree with you. Is that how I understood? I understood your explanation of the operation of the business in there.
Ingcazelo yakho ithe inqubo engisebenza ngayo ukuthi ke ohlolayo umhlolo oqala uyahlola bese bhala ke bese fila iform bese bhala affidavit. Emva kwaloko ke bese cela ke umunye osenza naye ukuthi akabuyekeze lo msebenzi awenzile bese ke uyafika ke naye uyahlola ke bese ke egcwalisa iform. Akukona lokho engikuzwe ukuthi kusetshenzwa ngaleyo nqubo.
The affidavit is compiled after the verification
Yes.
process.
Affidavit ke ibhalwa emva kokubuyekeza.
Thank you, that's perfect. Now, what are circumstances that would necessitate a further consultation or a further request of opinion from members in circumstances where the results are positive?
Uma ukuthi ke kutholakala umphumela owamukelekayo yini ke ngenza ukuthi kudingeke abanye abazoqhubekela phambili bebukeza.
Can the question be specific, please?
Repeated. Thank you, I'm going to
Can we
repeat it,
Be
Lieutenant
specific
Colonel.
to this matter
Cela ukuthi umbuzo ke awuqonde ngqo kulolu daba
so that I can be able to give a direct answer.
ukuze ngilethe impendulo eqonde ngqo.
No, Colonel, it does not work out like that. You can't tell me how to ask my questions. Your duty is to answer my questions. You can't tell me what questions must I ask. It does not work out like that. Instead, it works in a different way. I ask questions. If you've got an answer to the question, you answer it. If you feel like you are unable to answer the question, you say, no, yeah, I can't commit myself. Do you understand? You understand?
I hear that.
Thank you. Now, the question is, in what circumstances or what would necessitate a chief examiner to approach further members to confirm his positive finding after he had received a confirmation from the reviewer? Angazi noma ngibeka kahle na.
Esiphi
Yeah, that's the point. It's not an examiner, as I understand the evidence. It's an analyst. It could be a chief analyst, for instance, but it's not an examiner. Is that the position?
We use both words simultaneously, my
Yes.
lord.
Chief examiner or chief analyst?
They are forensic analysts, but sometimes we call them examiners as well.
Okay, fine.
Thank you,
And
ma'am.
then who's a verifier? Is there a verifier? Because I heard you saying you did the verification.
A verifier is a forensic analyst who is competent in that, competent and proficient in that type of examination.
Okay, sorry, Mr. Yes, if you can go on.
Thank you, ma'am.
Clarification about.
Yes. Now, my question is, did you understand it or should I repeat it?
To answer this question,
Yes.
once the findings have been verified, meaning that the verifier has completed the worksheet,
Yes.
he has appended his signature on the worksheet,
manje
Yes.
ke obuyekezayo ke umese buyekezile waseke egcwalisa ne-worksheet leyo
the process stops right there. Then the original examiner can compile an affidavit.
umsebenzi ke uyama lapho kusho ukuthi ke umhlolo ohlole kuqala usengayibhala i-affidavit.
Thank you. Thank you. Now we are done with the aspect of verification, the integrities and the dynamics involved in there, and thank you very much for your answer. Now, Lieutenant Colonel Mangena, after having analyze these exhibits, having approached you to confirm his findings, and having prepared an affidavit in terms of section 212 of the Criminal Procedure Act, he then submitted to the state, and then subsequent to that, the court process then started.
ushuthi emva kokuthi-ke Lieutenant Colonel Mangena esehlolile wacela-ke ukuthi kube nozobuyekeza emva kwalokho kwasebhala-ke i-affidavit kwase-ke emva kwalokho sekuyiwe enkantolo akunjani?
I hear that.
Thank you, sir. Then fast forward, he came here and testified about how he arrived at his findings.
Wafika-ke la wachaza ukuthi wafinyelela kanjani kulesi sinqumo salo mphumela uthola.
That is just by way of a background.
I hear that.
Thank you. Now, I must tell you that there seems to be a little dispute between the state and the defense with regard to what Mr. Mangena did.
Kukhona-ke impikisano phakathi komshishisi nabameli mayelana nokuthi ngale ndlela uMangena asebenza ngayo.
From my side, I cannot.
I'm sorry, just before you answer, I'm not so sure whether I was captured correctly, because I said there seems to be no dispute. I didn't say that there is a dispute.
That's what you said. A little dispute.
Yes, a little dispute. Yes, I'm sorry. Yes.
Bengikushilo-ke ukuthi kukhona impikisana kubona sengathi khona impikisano encane.
Yes. But nonetheless, with regard to the firearm and the bullets which he took under his microscope, there's no dispute there. That is what I actually want to put forward to you.
Ngifuna ukubeka phambi kwakho ukuthi akukho mpikiswane mayelana nezinhlamvu azifaka ngaphansi kwe-microscope nesibhamu.
Thank you. Do you understand?
I hear that. I understand.
Thank you. Now, he comes and tells the court that he used the CMS method, consecutive matching striation method, in order to arrive at a finding that told him that the firearm that he retrieved from Cleveland is the firearm from which the scene exhibit or the scene bullet was fired from.
Uthi emva kwalokho-ke wathi-ke wasebenzisa i-CMS uhlobo lwe-CMS ukuthi-ke akwazi ukuthi athole umphumela ukuthi le nhlamvu le ephuma endaweni yesigameko yadutshulwa yilesi sibhamu asithola eCleveland.
Do you understand?
I understand.
Ngiyakuzwa.
Thank you. Now, before I proceed, you also worked on the same exhibits, on some of the exhibits that were fired from the same firearm in order to affirm his finding, not so?
Shuthi nawe-ke wahlola le mbukiso le ayihlolile ukuze nawe ufinyeleleke kulo mphumela wawuthola unjani?
That is correct.
Yebo unjani?
Yeah, I think I won't waste time by repeating that you work on test bullet number 9 and test bullet number 4, and Mr. Mangena worked on test bullet number 5. I think Mr. Mangena worked on test bullet number 5 and 9, you worked on test bullet number 4 and 8 in order to compare those with the sin bullet. I won't get into that.
Angeke ngene ekutheni wena wasebenzisa inhlamvu le test bullet number 4 and ne test bullet number 8 manje noma wasebenzisa le number manje wasebenzisa le test bullet number 5 and 9 ukuthi nifukelele esinqumeni sokuthi iyona lesibambe sadulale yanhlamvu.
Do you understand?
I understand.
Ithi yebo ngiyakuzwa.
Thank you. Now, on the test bullet, which is test bullet number 9, test bullet number 8, which you worked on, there are certain issues which were raised by Mr. Mangena with regard to the nature of the bullet, which is test bullet number 8 that he worked on. We are narrowing this discussion now.
Manje khona izinto aziphawula abamangena mayelana nale test bullet number 8 ayisenza kuyona.
Now, naturally, let me not say naturally, in terms of your ballistic expertise, you decided not to compare test bullet number 8 and test bullet number 9 because they were fired from the same firearm. So it dawned in your mind that it would just be a waste of time because in any event these bullets will be the same, not so.
When I was saying it test bullet number 8 and 9, nanoma esasithuthule isibhamu esisodwa kunjani?
That is not a correct representation of what I did.
Akuyona incazelo enhle yalokho engakwenza.
Maybe let me put my question in this way. Upon receipt of the file from Mr. Mangena, you work on test bullet number 4 and on test bullet number 8, and you find that test bullet number 8 was a more convenient bullet on which you could then base your conclusion, and also on test bullet number 4, not so.
Manje uthoma usithola ifile uyithola kubamangena wena ke waseke uqoka ukuthi usenzise test bullet number 4 and number 8 ngoba beziveza umphumela omuhle akunjalo.
I checked all the test bullets,
Yes.
but at the end of the day I settled with TB4 and test bullet number 8.
Yes.
Hayi ngihlola zonke lezi enhlamvu kodwa ke ngaseke ngiqoka number 4 no number 8.
Thank you. That is exactly what I'm saying.
Ikona lokho engishoyo.
Thank you. Now, let's look at test bullet number 8. Did you find any characteristics which you would be able to convey to this court as you looked that bullet through your microscope? Distinct characteristics.
Manje musubheke le nhlamvu ye number 8 ikhona yini impawu ezithize owazibona kule nhlamvu lena ezingekho kwezinye inhlamvu ongakwazi ukuchazela inkantolo ngaso?
I have already demonstrated that to the court
Hayi bese ngikukhombisile lokho enkantolo.
with respect to test bullet number 8.
Masikhuluma ke ngenhlamvu i-test bullet number 8.
Yeah, I need to simplify my question, you see. I'm not referring to at the time when you compared the sin bullet and test bullet number 8. Now, when you look at test bullet number 8 on its own, you see, individually, did you manage to identify certain characteristics that would have interested your which would have been of interest in terms of your expertise that you can share this court with?
Ngithi mina le nhlamvu le number 8 angikhulumi ngokuthi wayiqhathanisa nale enye inhlamvu ephuma endaweni yesigaba. Sengikhuluma nge-test bullet number 8 iyodwa nje ukuthi zikhona yini izimpawu ezithize owathi uma uyihlola wazibona kule nhlamvu lena mhlambe kungathanda ukuthi mhlambe wathi usukwazela ukuziqaphela ongafisa ukuthi ke wethule lokho akubona lapha enhlamvini la enkantolo.
TB8, I selected it because I saw better profile, marking profile on it.
Yes.
But not saying that the others did not have marks completely.
TB8 ngamkhetha ngoba ngabona kukhona izimpawu ezibonakala kangcono kungasho ukuthi lezi ezinye zazingena impawu.
So those are the only features of TB8 that you can tell this court about.
Ikona kuphela ukubonakala kule nhlamvu ku number 8 okwehlukayo kwezinye inhlamvu okwazile ukubona.
That is correct.
Yebo njalo.
Thank you. And what about TB4?
Manje TB4 yena uthini ngayo?
TB4 also, as I have already demonstrated to this court, TB4 also had converging similarities.
Yebo TB4 naye unazo izimpawu ezihlanganayo ndawuthize nale inhlamvu.
But in overall, TB8 was marked. The transfer on TB8 was better in relation to the transfer in TB4.
Kodwa ke ukudluliseka kwezimpawu lapha le nhlamvu number 8 kwakubonakala kangcono kucace kangcono kunokudluliseka kwezimpawu ku TB4.
Thank you. Now, Mr. Mangena told this court that although he could identify certain marks in TB9 which enabled him to compare, which enabled him to find a positive finding when you compared it with the same bullet, but there was a bit of a challenge with test bullet number 9, and I'm going to explain it to you. What is it that he said?
Lieutenant Colonel Mangena uthi yena ke noma ke wabona ukuthi ke uyakwazi ukuthi aqhathanise kalula inhlamvu leyo number 9 nenhlamvu ephuma endaweni yesigameko, kodwa kukhona izinselelo ahlangana nazo mayelana nale nhlamvu number 9.
And this is what, do you follow?
I follow.
Thank you. And this is what he said.
Nakho kakusho.
Now he says in his determination of the striations on, let me start it this way. He said it is so that he found that there were striations in the exhibit bullet which he could compare with certain striations which were in the test bullet number 9.
Uthi yena khona imigqa ayibona ise kule nhlamvu le ephuma endaweni yesigameko yabona ukuthi yaqhathaniseka nemigqa etholakala kule nhlamvu test bullet number 9.
However, the challenge that he had is that the shape of the bullet was in the form of a concave. Concave, in other words, it had a ditch. It bended. It had a bent inward, a concave, yes. That is what, amongst others, that he told this court.
Uthi ke kukhona inselelo ayithola yokuthi la obusweni benhlamvu kwakukhona indawo la engathi inokuba nesigodi kancane esenza ukuthi impawu zingadluliseki kahle.
Now, at the area where there is that ditch, he could not find those striations.
Uthi ke mase fika ke kulo mgodi la akhuluma ngawo le migqa le abeyifuna wayengayiboni kahle.
Do you understand?
I hear that.
Ngiyakuzwa.
Now, very interesting. We even gave him, I think the defense even requested him to demonstrate through a spirit level what is it that he was actually saying. Then he practically demonstrated that when he was in the box.
Never pass ukuthi akakhombise la enkantolo ukuthi yini la echaza ngayo.
Now, he said the bullet had a ditch.
Uthi ke kwakhona umgodi kwakhona lapha ebusweni bentambo.
Thank you. Now, you used test bullet number 8 to do the same exercise that he was requested to do. The question is, did you find that test bullet number 8 also had a ditch, which prevented the spontaneous transfer of the striations?
Manje ngibuza ukuthi nawe ke wawubona yini lo mgojana la ukhuluma ngawo ukuthi wawubona enhlamvini unumber 9 wawubona yini kule nhlamvu number 8 wena lo wawufakaza ngayo?
I cannot remember all the details around the circumference of the bullet, but what I know is that I found sufficiency to be able to come to the conclusion I came.
Angeke ngakwazi ukukhumbula yonke imininingwane emayelana nale nhlamvu leya, kodwa engikhumbulayo ukuthi ngathola izimpawu ezilingene ukuthi zingakwazi ukufinyelela emphumeleni wokufananisa.
Thank you. Now, immediately what struck me very strange is the fact that Mr. Mangena says, when I analyzed this bullet, it had a ditch. It got fired from the same firearm that test bullet number 8 was fired from. Now, it struck me very strange as to how could it then be so that Mr. Serrero, not Mr. Lieutenant Colonel Serrero, decided to use bullet number 8 when Mr. Mangena actually did his test on bullet number 9, and bullet number 9 had a ditch. Did bullet number 8 have a ditch?
Ngifuna ukwazi ukuthi kukhona yini indawo la icindezeleke khona bullet number 8 ngoba nakho sibona uLieutenant Colonel Mangena yena wakhetha ukusebenzisa inhlamvu leyo number 9, wena wakhetha ukusebenzisa number 8.
My lord, we want to make objections. Firstly, the witness is Lieutenant Colonel Serrero, not Serrero. And secondly,
I did not get that, my lord.
The witness is Lieutenant Colonel Serrero, not Serrero.
Oh, I don't think that is material.
Yes,
I think it's just neither here nor there. Yeah. When I say Serrero, I actually mean Serrero.
Yeah.
It's a surname that I'm not familiar to, but it's unlike Mahlangu, Bomtsweni, Bomtimunya, and Bomnisi, you see.
Well,
thank you, madam.
Secondly, the evidence of Colonel Mangena is that he tested, he looked at all the test bullets and he positively identified all of them, but that, he chose to use bullet 5 and 9 because the transfer of marks was better. My colleagues keep on referring to the fact that bullet 9 had a ditch. I think the evidence of Lieutenant Colonel Mangena was because this was a CMJ, it's made of soft material, and it's sort of, there's an area where it bent a bit and did not transfer marks properly, but he did not use the word ditch.
Exactly, my lord. I think the court would understand that when I was trying to explain that bend a bit, I said I actually was struggling to get a proper weight, which is the reason why I actually put this witness at ease that in Mr. Mangena's demonstration, he even used a spirit level to demonstrate that at a particular point, that bullet had a bend, a ditch. When I say a ditch, I mean that
An
bend.
indentation. That's the right word.
Yes, indentation, incidentation, man.
Indentation.
Indentation, man.
Is it there in ballistics, sir?
That the term exists, my lord.
Okay, fine.
Le
Yes.
igama lethiwa indentation kusho ukuthi ke ukwehla kancane ebusweni liyasetshenziswa nakwa-ballistic.
Thank you. That bullet had a ditch. When I say ditch, I refer to indentation. Now, I'm sorry.
Leyo nhlamvu leyo inokuhlehliseka okusho ukuthi sithi phecelezi ngesilungu i-indentation.
Now, did the bullet that you worked on to confirm Mangena's finding had that indentation? I think I need to repeat this word many times, my lord, because it's a bit of a tongue twister. It's indentation.
Manje kule nhlamvu kona uyisebenzisa nako ke lokuhlehliseka noma umgojana lokukhulunywa ngawo esithi phecelezi ngesilungu indentation.
The one that you worked on, bullet number 8,
Kukhulunywa ngale nhlamvu wena owasebenza ngayo.
or bullet number 4.
Sisho ke ubullet number 4.
It's bullet number 4 or bullet number 8. Did they have that incidentation?
So ngisho ke lezi nhlamvu ezimbili number 4 no number 8 wayenayo yini lokuhlehliseka.
I cannot recall because
Thank you.
there are several things, several marks that one is looking at around the circumference of the bullet, so I cannot recall.
Angisakhumbuli ngoba zazi iningi izinto engangifanele ngizibheke.
But surely say if it had that indentation, you would have realized it, not so?
Kodwa ke uba kwakukhona lokuhlehliseka lokhu ebusweni benhlamvu wawuyokubona ukuqaphela kunjalo.
I still stick to my answer to say that I cannot recall. I cannot mislead this court and say I saw it in detention or I did not see it. I can simply not recall.
Ukuthi nje angisakhumbula ukuthi ngayibona yini lokuhlehliseka noma ngizange ngikubone. Ukuthi nje into ekhona ukuthi angisakhumbula.
Thank you. Now, that is therefore an indication that your confirmation of Mangena's results were based on exhibits which did not exhibit similar characteristics.
Kodwa ukhona ukuthi umphumela wakho noma wawubheke inhlamvu eyodwa.
No, I mean his confirmation of Mr. Mangena's work to have been positive could not have been proper because they were working on exhibits which did not have similar characteristics. That is what I'm trying to say.
Engishoyo ke ukuthi ke umphumela wakho noma kanina uzama uqinisa umsebenzi wakho uqinisekisa umsebenzi wenziwa uMangena wawusebenzisa ke izinhlamvu ezingenazo ezingakhekanga ngendlela efanayo.
I have already explained that the ballistics is not based on the fact that the marks which are visible on even bullets fired from the same firearm, those marks are not microscopically identical. They are similar. They are similar to a certain degree. So what you see on test number 1 is not a photocopy of the surface of test bullet number 5 or number 6. The degree of similarity among the tests will show that they have a common origin, but it does not mean that they are microscopically identical, but they are similar to a high degree.
Ukuthi bawusizitholayo lapha kulezi inhlamvu ezihlolayo zinezinga elifanayo lezimpawu ezifana nayo kusho ukuthi ke uma uzibheka ngaphansi kwe-microscope uzobona ukuthi zifana ncimishi.
I don't dispute that. But what I'm saying to you, sir, is that the characteristics, the ukufana kwalama bullets, the way in which they look like, was not the same, because Mangenas had that had that ditch, that incidentation. The ones that you work upon, you cannot specifically say they had that ditch or not. So in other words,
ukuchaza ukuthi inhlamvu esetshenziswa uMangena yayinalokhu kwehliseka ebesikhuluma ngako, uphawu lolu esingaliboni kule nhlamvu lezi wena owasebenzisa, usho ukuthi zazingafani lezi nhlamvu ezimbili.
That statement will be correct only if we agree that marks on bullets are microscopically identical.
Singavumelana uma ukuthi siyazwana ngokuthi impawu zinhlamvini ngaphansi kwe-microscope ziyakwazi ukubonakala ukuthi ziyafana.
And it is not the case.
And akunjalo.
You don't seem to understand my question. So in other words, you're comparing stars, two stars that not were cooked from the same pot, if I were to say like that. In other words, the other exhibit had a ditch. The ones that you worked upon did not have a ditch. So how could you then have said that they match when the instrument that you're working upon to compare were not similar?
Kungakwazi kanjani ukuthi lezi zinto lezi nhlamvu zazifana noma ukuthi ke inhlamvu lezi ebusweni bazo zazingafani?
The test bullets were all fired from the same firearm.
Ama-test bullet wonke adutshulwa ngesibhamu esisodwa.
But because of reproducibility or transferability of marks, what you find on group number 1 for test number 1, for example, you may not find it adequately on test number 1. I mean to say on group number 1 of test number 2. I'm just making an example.
Letha isibonelo la sokuthi ke nanoma sidutshule isibhamu esisodwa kodwa ke impawu uzozithola lapha emseleni unumber 1 enhlamvini yokuqala akusho ukuthi uzozithola zinjengalewa uzibonile enhlamvini yokuqala enhlamvini yesibili.
That is why you must consider all the groups which are visible on the specimen.
Ufanele ubheke yonke imisele ekhona ekuzungezeni ezungezele lenhlamvu.
So the similarities, the total similarities against the differences will tell you whether or not those specimens have a common origin.
Futhi ke ukufanana konke okukhona nokwehlukana konke okukhona ikona okuzokutshela ukuthi lezi nhlamvu ziyafana yini.
Thank you, sir. I hear your explanation. Now, I'm going to put it to you, sir, that based on the characters that Mr. Mangena told this court that the bullet number 9 exhibited, on which he based his finding, and the fact that you could not identify those characters, that ditchy character, on the bullets that you worked on.
Lezimpawu kena uMangena azithola enhlamvini leyo number 9 wena ungakwazanga ukuzibona.
You could therefore not have come to the conclusion that the bullet that Mr. Mangena said was fired from the firearm test bullet number 9 that was fired from the firearm that you went to fetch at Cleveland, you could not have confirmed that those that were fired by you as well could have been fired by the same firearm because of the differences in the structure of the bullet.
Nje kungeke ukwazi ukuthi ke inhlamvu lena ayadutshulwa umangena ngilesibhamu esivele Cleveland lezi ezinye inhlamvu wena wasidubula ungeke usho ukuthi lezi inhlamvu lezi ngempela zasidutshule yiso leso sibhamu.
That is incorrect.
Cha akulona iqiniso lo.
Thank you. Let's proceed. Now, striations. Before I get to that, you said the results with regard to the subjective, the results, you go through a microscope, you find that there are similarities in terms of striations or the pattern matching. The interpretation of those results is subjective, not so.
Sifika musutholeke lemigqa oyibonile usenzisa pattern matches noma SMS usho ukuthi ke ekuletha umbiko mayelana naloko ukuthi umphumela unjani usho ukuthi lokho kuchemile akunjani.
That is correct.
Yebo unjani.
Thank you. Now, would the finding whether a certain mark in a bullet constitute a striation be a subjective one or not?
Manje ukubona ukuthi inhlamvu inomugqa othile owuphawu lokho kuphuma ekutheni ubani obhekile noma kunjani.
The marks that are on the surface of the specimen, they form objective facts.
Manje lokho impawu ke lesi sithola ke etholakala ebusweni benhlamvu into efana nayo nanoma ubani oyibhekile.
So, in other words, you cannot look at the mark and say, from my viewpoint, no, this is not a striation. And somebody comes and say, no, from my viewpoint, this is a striation. In other words, a striation remains a striation, whether you like it or not.
Usho ukuthi ke uma kukhona umugqa khona umubonile wena akusho angeke kwenzeke ukuthi omunye aphinde azobheka athi cha awukho umugqa lo wena uthi ubonile. Uma kukhona umugqa ukhona umugqa uphikiseka kanjani.
When the marks are there, they are there. So the person who view the specimen, he must interpret what he see on the specimen.
Imigqa ukhona lo mugqa kodwa ke umuntu ofika azobheka ufanele ke abe naloko ukuthi ke azochaza kahle ukuthi yini lento ayibonayo.
If I just use simple terms, maybe
Yes.
I can say what is on the surface of the specimen is decoded. I mean, it's encoded.
Is
So
what?
he is encoded.
He's
He must
encoded.
decode. Yes, he must decode it.
Okay.
Meaning that he must be able to identify it.
Yes.
It is there, but it is now up to the analyst to decode, to identify what he sees.
Yes.
And that will depend on his level of training.
Manje ukuthi akwazi ukubona imigqa ekhona lapha ebusweni benhlamvu lona ke obhekayo ufanele abheke bese enza lokhu kuthiwa isilungu ukudecode kusho ukuthi uguqula lokho akubonayo kube okuchazekayo uma ke esekubonileke lokho ke bese ke iyakwazi ukuthi akuchaze ukuthi kuyini.
That is my question. I am saying the determination of whether a mark as it is seen under a microscope is constituting a striation or not. Is it a subjective thing or is it an objective thing?
Ngibuzayo ukuthi mina uphawu lolu olubonakalayo lapha lokho kuthiwa striation imigqa le ebonakalayo lapha usho ukuthi kuncike kakhulu ekutheni umuntu unobuchwepheshe obungakanani yini.
Sorry. This witness is basically saying the marks
Yes,
are immutable.
yes,
They are there.
yes,
They are formed.
yes.
The only issue is the interpretation or the decoding of the marks, as he says, which is exercised by an examiner. And that will depend on his training proficiency in the interpretation of those marks. But those marks are ineluctable. They are there.
We agree,
That's
my
what
lord.
he says, it's not me.
We agree that those marks are there.
Yes.
But my question is the interpretation
Oh, yeah.
of whether those marks constitute a striation or not.
Yeah.
Is it a subjective thing based on the fact, on the experience and the level of education of that person, or what?
Ukuthi mina ngibuzayo ukuthi ke uma kukhona lemigqa ekhona leyo kusho ukuthi ukwazi ukuthi ibonakale lemigqa lena nokuchaza ukuthi ngempela ikhona kuncikile yini ekutheni lo muntu lo ufunde kangakanani futhi unekhona elingakanani.
Yes, the interpretation, that is the identification of those marks,
Yes.
is subjective in nature.
Thank you.
Cha ngikhuluma ukuhlonza nje leyo migqa ikona ukuncike ekutheni lo muntu uqeqeshwe kangakanani.
Thank you. Then that simply means that one expert might identify a certain mark as a striation and the other expert might differ with him, not so.
Lokho kuchaza ukuthi kukhona uchwepheshe ongabona umugqa bese ethi umugqa lona ebefika omunye athi cha akubona umugqa.
Is that what you're explaining?
Ikona lokho kushoyo.
Yes, if the other expert does not have adequate training, he will not be able to identify what is already on the specimen.
Ya umenge qeqeshiwe ngokulingene lo munye uchwepheshe angeke akwazi ukubona lokho okukhonjwayo.
Let's this expert went to school on the 1st of January 2024. They were trained for 3 years. And the first expert is 24 years in the service. The other expert has got exactly 24 years. The experience is similar in all material respects. Let's not try to say the other one is less experienced. But now the principle is one expert can say this is a striation and the other can say no, according to me this is not a striation, who have the same qualification and the same level of experience. That is the case. That's what we're trying to explain, not so.
Okuchazayo ukuthi ngenzeka ukuthi kube nochwepheshe abafunde ngokulingana kodwa komunye athi yebo ngiyabona umugqa omunye athi cha nguboni.
The other expert, if he uses the wrong technique, but the wrong technique goes back to skill.
Ya umesenzisa indlela ke engeyinhle kodwa ke masikhuluma ngendlela engenhle sisabuyela vele kulokhu ukuthi uqeqeshwe kanjani.
I cannot escape the question of skill, knowledge and skill.
Angeke sikwazi ukubalekela ke indaba yokuqeqesheka.
Because even the theory we rely upon, that is knowledge.
Yes.
And when you operationalize it, you put it in practice,
Yes.
you are building a skill. So I cannot state anything outside the parameters of knowledge and skill.
Yebo nale theory siyifundiswayo egcineni siyifunda bese siyoyisebenzisa.
Thank you.
Ikho ngithi asikwazi ukubalekela ukuthi kukhona ukuqeqesheka nolwazi.
Thank you, Lieutenant Colonel. But we are agreeing that subjectively one expert may say this is a striation, the other one may say this is not a striation. The interpretation of what they see there, it's subjective.
Usho ukuthi ngibona kochwepheshe abehlukile omunye angabona bese ethi ukhona umugqa omunye athebhekile abone sengathi awokho umugqa ngale ndlela le ababheka ngokwehlukile.
It may happen, yes.
Thank
If if the level of skill, knowledge and skill is not the same.
Uma ukuthi ke ulwazi lwabo nokuqeqesheka kwabo akulingani kungenzeka.
Thank you. Now let's come to the method of counting this striation, which are found in same relative area or position.
Asikhulume ngokubala imigqa le ebonakala isendaweni efananayo.
Now in circumstances where the CMS theory of determination is used.
Laphoekusetshenziswa khona ke i-theory lena ye-CMS.
Thank you. Now you had explained what relative position mean in very clear and certain terms.
Ukusichazile ukuthi i-relative position noma indawo lapho kutholakala uphawu kuyini.
Now you had introduced your curriculum vitae as, amongst others, you said you were a teacher. You go out and give lectures on ballistic activities and all those things. In other words, you go out and teach students. It dawned to me that you probably, those new members that arrive at your section, you also take them through these theories, not so?
Kusichazile ukuthi ke kusiviya kwachaza ukuthi ke unokuhamba uyahamba uyofundisa nabanye kusho ukuthi uma kukhona abasha abafika la kule section yethu nabo uyabafundisa njani.
It is correct until I assume the current role. When I assumed the role I'm currently in, I stopped presentations.
Uma sengifikele kulesi sigaba engikusona angisaqhubeki nokwethula izifundo.
Yes, but you are a teacher by blood, if I were to put it that way.
Hayi kusho ukuthi ke kusegazini kwena ukufundisa. Mangabeka kanjalo.
I hear that.
Ngiyakuzwa.
Thank you. Now, how do you count the striation that are found in same relative area?
Manje ke lemigqa lenako oyithola ke isendaweni efananayo uyibala kanjani?
Just take us through that process.
Ngase chazela ke ukuthi inqubo ihamba kanjani.
As I've indicated,
Yes.
that I follow the dominant and the old traditional method,
Yes.
pattern matching method.
Njengoba sengichazile ngisebenzisa inqubo ejwayelekile endala.
Yes. Which is
The pattern matching method.
pattern matching.
Yile i-pattern matching method kusho ukuthi ke ukuhlola ke ama-pattern abonakalayo.
Yes.
So you will compare the two surface contours of the marks.
Kusho ukuthi uzohlola ke lobuso la ebusweni balezi inhlamvu ukuthi kukanjani.
Yes.
Within which there will be ridges. That is the raised part of the mark.
Kusho ukuthi kunazaba nala ubuso bele nhlamvu kuphakeme khona.
And there will be valleys. That is the the bottom part of the mark.
Kusho kuzoba khona le ndawo la kunesigodi khona.
Yes.
And then you also study the profile of the general profile of the surface contour.
Kusho ukuthi uzobheka ke ne-profile yobuso benhlamvu.
Yes.
Then you consider the space between the marks, that is the space between the ridges.
Manje kusho ukuthi lapho uzobheka ukuthi amabanga angakanani phakathi kwa lapho kuphakeme khona.
Then you consider the width of the valley.
Kusho ukuthi ke lezi zigodi uzobheka ke nokuthi zinobubanzi obungakanani.
you consider the depth of the valley,
usho nokuthi ke ijule kangakanani ke lesi sigodi,
and those, then you must consider the spatial relationship between the marks.
manje ke usuzobheka ke nokuthi ke amabanga akhona phakathi kwalezi impawu ahleli kanjani.
Yes.
And that must be similar on the like left and right.
Yes.
Kusho ukuthi ke kule luhlangothi lokwesokunxele na kulolu kusho ukuthi enye inhlamvu kufanele kube okufana nayo nanoma ubheka ngokwesokudla kulenye inhlamvu.
Thank you.
And those marks must be at the same relative position.
Kusho ke lezi mpawu lezi kufanele zitholakale endaweni efananayo.
Meaning that when the marks on the exhibit part are on the nose of the bullet, the marks on the test specimen must also be on the nose of the bullet.
Kusho ke uma kuwukuthi lelo phawu oluthola lapha enhlamvini ke umbukiso exhibition bullet kufanele uma ukuthi utholakala ekhaleni layo lolu phawu lolubhekile nalo nakule nhlamvu ke le test lolu phawu lolubheke ngale lufanele lutholakale endaweni efananayo ukuthi ekhaleni lale nhlamvu ehlolwa ngayo test bullet.
Yes.
On the same position, same relative position within the groove or on the land.
Kusho ukuthi kufanele kube sendaweni eqhathanisekayo.
Yes.
So when that is studied, it will determine and you will consider the similarities against the differences that will exist.
Kusho ukuthi umusu ubheka kanjalo siyobheka ke ukufanana noma ukwehlukana.
Then you will continue the same exercise throughout the whole circumference of the bullet.
Usho ukuthi ke usuzosungeza yonke ke inhlamvu kulokhu ubheka ngaleyo ndlela.
When correspondence of marks is higher, that is when similarities are higher than the differences.
Uma ke uthola ukuthi kufanana nayo kusezingeni ngaphezulu kakhulu kwelokuhlukana.
We are able to make a positive identification.
Uyakwazi ukubona ukuthi lezi inhlamvu zinezimpawu ezifanayo.
Yes.
So that is the procedure that I followed.
Iyona ke inqubo engiyilandelile.
Okay, thank you, sir. Maybe you did not understand my question. My question was, in relation to what Mr. Mangena said, use CMS to find a match. This CMS method to find a match. In other words, the usage of striations. Now, I was requesting you to explain to this court, how do you count this striation in order to get the determination that there's a match?
Uthi manje uthayela usenzise iCMS umshuthi ubala imigqa. Ufuna ukwazi ukuthi usenzise kanjani ke ngeCMS le ukubona ukuthi ke kunokufanana na kulezi inhlamvu.
In other words, how do you count this striation to constitute, for them to constitute a match?
Manje ke wena ke uyibala kanjani ke le migqa lo ohlangana nayo lapha ukuze uthi wena yebo iyafanana?
I did not use the CMS approach.
Ngizange ngisebenzise iCMS approach.
Yes, that I do understand. I mean, as an expert, you said the pattern matching and the CMS method are mutually inclusive. In other words, there's nothing wrong in one member using a pattern match and there's nothing wrong in the other member using a CMS to do a determination or to do an analysis. Now, as an expert, I'm requesting you to assist this court. When you are using CMS as a method of comparison, how do you then count this striation?
Uthawa ni pattern matching ne CMS zenza into efananayo. Manje ke ngifuna ukwazi ukuthi njengochwepheshe wena ukubala kanjani uma usebenzisa iCMS ukuthi imigqa uyibala kanjani ukuthi iyafanana.
The approach of CMS, as I understand it, although I did not apply it, or I don't apply it, it states that there should be consecutive.
Let's come here. You say you never used CMS in any of your analysis.
Uthi ke wena uzange uyisebenzise i-CMS ekuhlaziyeni kwakho?
I use pattern matching because it is a standard method that we
Ngisebenzise
use.
i-pattern matching ngoba inqubo le ejwayelekile esiyisilandelelayo.
Lieutenant Colonel, please understand my question. My question is, are you saying that in any of the experiments, that in any of the analysis that you did, you never used CMS?
Awusisambuzo wami ukuthi wena uthi awukazi usebenzisa i-CMS kulokuhlaziya obukwenza?
I use pattern matching as it is a method that is as it is a method that we use currently at office.
Ngisebenzise i-pattern matching ngoba kuyile ndlela eyinqubo esenza ngayo.
So am I then correct to understand you to mean that there's no analysis that you ever used where you used CMS as a method of analysis? You used only up to this stage. You have been using only pattern matching because that's a required standard of the theory that should be used.
Ochazayo ke ukuthi wena awukazi uyisebenzisa i-CMS kuyofikela namhlanje ukuthi wena ubusenzisa kuphela i-pattern matching method ngoba ile method eniyisebenzisayo.
From my side, yes, I use pattern matching.
Thank you.
Ehlangothini lwami senzisana i-pattern matching.
Thank you. My lord, I realize that we left with, it's actually 1:45, that is 15 minutes to 1 o'clock. I don't know, there is something that is bugging me here. I don't know, may we take an early adjournment, my lord? I don't know what is happening. I feel like I'm getting a bit dizzy.
What do you mean early adjournment? You mean we must adjourn for the day?
No, my lord, for the lunchtime. There's something that is making me dizzy, I don't know what it is. I want to be very sincere, man.
Too much muti.
Maybe, my lord. And I can see where it comes from. Thank you, my lord.
Maybe even the judges got bells here.
Yes. Thank you.